The Fast Thinking Book and Slow by author Daniel Kahneman. If he gives you a bat and a ball up to $1 and a dime a dozen, and that I told you that a bat costs $1 quite the ball, what proportion does the ball cost of 10 cents? Immediately on your mind subsequently you have been deceived by any author, and psychologist Daniel Kahneman is looking you quick thinking one system. If you employ the second slow thinking system, you realize if the ball costs 10 cents then the bat should cost a dime, $1, and also the combined cost it would be $1.20. An absolute and intuitive thinking system number 1 and number thinking system 2. Sort of a bunch of newspapers, reporters and editor. A messenger system writes one down stories and hand them over to the editor. The order for the editor doesn't have time or power to test the source of every story, so I made a decision to trust the blind. Reporters publish stories not realized, then she publishes the stories she defends even if it's wrong. It happens she and also the newspaper are in trouble. The same is true for our lives. If we do not learn how to cut down and use our editor, check out the one reporting system that we may find ourselves within the wrong profession, or we start working with or staying with the incorrect partner in a dysfunctional relationship. Too long ago there have been dozens of the way our intuitive thinking system can fool us. Just Google's cognitive biases and it'll be soon you get overwhelmed, but after reading you discover fast and slow thinking. 3 cognitive biases cause most of our mistakes are in quick thinking. Slightly adjusting these biases to suit the shortcut fast is fast. Defective thinking bias could be a frequent beloved exposed author of bias Daniel Kahneman. He says reliable thanks to make people believe in lies is frequent repetition because familiarity isn't easy to differentiate from the reality. Authoritarian institutions and labels. As long as we all know this fact, the more we see something we would have trusted. This is why if we didn't research before the election we'll trust the candidate whose name we heard is watch more when students are available. University of Michigan has been exposed to Turkish-sounding words like Katarja and Sarisake in ad boxes within the foreground school newspaper page. For several these students were more likely for weeks random words in line with meaning good thing within the survey. Later, if we do not verify who you and that I are bias, repeated exposure, or what psychologists call mere exposure effect before making is very important decision that our preferences are going to be based on our environmental adaptation. To combat repeated exposures bias, exercising our discretion, we must stop before making a vital decision and we ask ourselves, is that this the simplest option or just the choice that I've been employing a lot? If I'm employing a new employee, I prefer candidate A. Candidate B. First, you might simply prefer candidate A because he spent longer with him creating the best decision. I would like to challenge one rule system and scheduling more face-to-face with the opposite filter. When my wife and I purchased a house, we made guaranteed to spend equally the amount of your time in homes and neighborhoods in each of our top 3 neighborhoods options. If you do not want to fall prey to a bias in repeated exposure, usually you ask yourself, this can be the best choice or simply the selection that you simply were on. Often exposed to defective fasting. Second bias, thinking of the established order, biased on why we stay in jobs we do not do, like why CEOs are investing more cash in failed projects and why they are doing the foremost investors are holding losing shares for 11 years months out of the year and just get the courage to sell stock in December. 2. There are 2 sorts of getting a decent reduction: reasons for a loss aversion and moratorium. After decades of searching, Daniel Kahneman says losses loom larger than the gains are. Of course, his research shows that the average person will psychologically weight loss weighs twice the sport weight. Loss aversion explains why many folks instinctively reject the subsequent bet. Flip a $150 coin flip or lose $100 on tails. If people gyrate below this bet will curtail and use system to challenge their system. On intuition, they realized that if they did, they took that 10 times basically a guarantee to earn money. For clarification, the giveaway effect. Kahneman collected a random group students and he gave them a replacement cup of coffee. Then he asked them what proportion they'd be willing to sell their mug. Get record our collected answers. Another group of random students and he asked if they wanted a cup of coffee or an amount of cash they thought it'd be the equivalent value of a mug. The first group sellers appreciate the mug, $7.12. However, the second group of the chosen one who didn't, she owns a mug and was empty of any the value of the emotional attachment to the mug. The mug is $3.12 from the identical cup encompasses a radically different view from the perceived value. So if we instinctively transcend the aversion to losses and overestimate what we've invested within the effect of the gift, then we are going to be trapped within the past and destined to take care of the established order for a confrontation. We must notice the established order bias when our preference is to preserve the establishment and ask ourselves, what opportunities are I losing by maintaining the establishment? The thought is to use loss aversion against itself and align your fear of losing what you've got and what you invest with losing a much better opportunity. During this way gives you options outside the established order, psychologically equal. For instance, if I invested my money during this failed stock, what are the dear investments within which able to vertical bar I'll not be ready to invest my money in it? Or if I still invest my time during this failed project, what are the opposite opportunities that I'll not be able to invest my time in? Fast and wrong thinking bias. Number 3, visual impairment. What's your automatic response to the following puzzle from Thinking Fast and Slow? Steve is an American who is incredibly shy and really helpful but doesn't care much about people or sales. Failed to reality. Steve could be a tidy soul and features a need for order and structure as Steve. Steve is more likely to be a librarian or a farmer if librarians seem to be the apparent choice supported the limited information they need provided you've got been fooled with System 1 again. If you impede and use System 2, then you're realizing that the likelihood of Steve being a librarian is extremely weak. If you check your quick intuitive conclusion, you'll realize that there are literally rather more farmers than librarians within the U.S., with nearly 20 times more male farmers than male librarians. Jumping to conclusion about Steve is that the hallmark of one system that one likes to use limited information to make quick judgments and so withhold all the conflicting information that I call visual impairment bias. Author Daniel Kahneman calls it WIATI, what you see is all theirs. Kahneman explains that the primary system sees 2 pieces or 3 pieces of knowledge, then deduce and invent reasons and intentions, then obscure galaxies and suppress suspicion, which is why you'll be able to meet someone and assume you recognize what they're like, supported their profession or what they give the impression of being like, only to understand later more and the data that your judgment was completely wrong. To counter our natural tendency to make beliefs supported limited information, we'd like to urge one to asking ourselves why the other could be true. Once I provides a project just like one I did before and that I think it might be easy, I asked myself, why might the alternative be true? This question prompts me to check old assumptions, be prepared for the upcoming new challenges, and stop me from underestimating the project and misleading others, no matter the case. And asking why the other can be true broadens our lens and helps us identify useful information that we were unconsciously ignoring. That the next time that you just make an enormous decision and have an automatic preference, bog down and clear the false thinking checklist. Ask yourself if this can be the most effective option or simply the one that I've got been exposed to lots. Is this the simplest option, or am I against losing and falling into the established order bias? And is this the simplest option, or I've got vision defect and wish to explore other possibilities? As Daniel Kahneman says, that keeping one's vigil against prejudices could be a chore, a fashionable mistake that's sometimes well worth the effort. That was the key message I gathered from Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This book will facilitate you make better decisions and think clearly. Thanks for watching.